Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you back for another Ask Me Anything today.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. You know what? I am in a mood of, what's my mood? My mood is life is good.
Good.
That's
That
kind
makes
of
one of
my
us.
like,
So I'm glad. I'm glad you're
yeah.
feeling that way.
Well, but normally I'm so like everything's not where it should be. And I think we've talked about this a little bit, like when you're focused on improving, when you're focused on having life better at home and at work or whatever, we have a tendency to a little bit like always focus on what's not right and what needs to change. And I'm really intentionally trying to sit back in life a little bit and go, you know what? I got my legs, I got my vision, I got my hearing, I have opportunity placed before me. Man, like it's okay, and I'll actually give props to one of my employees. This guy, his name's Fernando, complete stud on my team. Love this guy. I didn't know this about him. He shared this on Friday. He has a picture of this little Africa boy carrying cinder blocks, working on a job, just like a young little boy. He looks at that picture every morning when he starts his day. And it reminds him, like, not that life's great so much, but like opportunity. This kid, no opportunity.
Right.
But today he has opportunity. And I love that. And I'm like, you know what? I need to level set a little bit better.
That's
So
cool.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm glad, man, because I'm in a bad mood today and I'm not feeling like that. So hopefully you'll lift up the conversation. It is interesting how fickle we are. It's like, who knows? In the next 2 hours, something could happen and I'll be on top of the moon, right?
Yeah,
And I've actually
that's
been
so
thinking a
true.
lot about this, about happiness. In the past, we've talked about happiness is not the goal. And I still believe that's the case. I really strive for fulfillment in my life. And just to give a quick synopsis of the difference, at least how I view it, is happiness is some place that's free of
Excitement.
challenge and adversity, and it's just bliss and it's joy. And fulfillment is not the absence of joy, but the ability to, or excuse me, the absence of hardship, but the ability to deal with it in an appropriate way. And look, we can do the semantical debate. That's not what
Yeah.
I want to get into. I don't care what you call it. I think everybody understands the difference. But I've been thinking a lot about this concept of the emotion of happiness. Like, what I want to be happy. And when am I happy? Well, I'm happy when external factors are going my way. Like my wife's in a
Things
good
outside your
mood,
control. Yeah.
or my kids are behaving and enjoying their time. Maybe I just landed a big contract. Maybe the downloads on a specific podcast was really good. It was exceptional. Maybe somebody just a high profile podcast guest just accepted an invite. Like these are the times where I'm the happiest. And I got thinking, what a dangerous trap that the
I
only
know.
time that we can be happy is when the only time, trying to think about wording this correctly, the times that we're often the happiest are the times completely outside of our control. Like I can't control if my wife's in a good mood. I can influence that. I can't entirely control whether or not somebody accepts a podcast invite, but can I be happy with myself? Or another one that I see a lot is people will be happy or joyous about a title or a role or a label that's assigned to them, like I am strong, or I'm a successful
Yeah.
businessman, or even I'm a great father, or I'm a great husband. And those are things to be proud of, especially if you put in the work. But what if all of that is stripped away? What if tomorrow, what if this
Then what?
afternoon your boss calls you in and gives you a pink slip and says, "Hey man, we're doing mass layoffs, you're out." What then? Who are you then? What if your wife
Yeah.
dies or she wants to divorce? Or what if one of your kids has a medical condition? Or I had a conversation with a friend, and one of his children has gone astray, according to what he
Yeah.
has tried to teach his daughter. And and so what happens then? Who are you then? You can no longer identify yourself, at least in your mind, as a good father. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying in your mind, that's what we tell ourselves. Hey, I'm no longer a businessman because I'm out of a job. Who are we then? Can we be happy then? I don't have the answer. These are just things I think about when I'm, bored or just throughout the day.
You mean when you're focused on really what's important? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like, and I think that's why religion can be so powerful,
Yeah.
because then it's not about the now. It's not about how life is going. It's something bigger than ourselves. And we get hope in this idea of a longer eternal game that's not, that's bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, I'm
hard.
glad you
You
I'm
know?
glad you used the word hope because I actually wrote this one sentence down right here. And I'm not sure this is in the right order, so you guys can think about this, pontificate on this a little bit. Movement is hope and optimism. That's what I wrote. And I don't know if it's movement is hope and optimism or optimism and hope inspires movement. I'm not sure if it's one way or the other.
I like that latter, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be it. But I would suggest that they fuel each other because if you have hope of the future, then you're going to get up and you're going to move towards that future. If you begin to move towards that future, you're going to experience some results, and that's going to garner additional hope and optimism about your path. So I think they can feed
Yeah.
off of each other, but movement maybe isn't even the right term. Maybe the right term is
Momentum.
uh no, it's let me think about this here just for a quick second. I would say meaningful movement.
Hmm.
Like not just being busy. We
Yeah.
sometimes
Intentional. Yeah.
yeah, well, and sometimes my son a couple months back got a little ant farm and he put the sand in there and he put the ants in there. And then we stared and we watched these ants and we laughed. We were entertained by the ants, these stupid, ridiculous. They're like building tunnels and like we're laughing at them and they're just so frantic and moving away, moving all over the place. To us, it looks meaningless. To them, there's purpose in it.
Purpose. Yeah.
But sometimes we're the ants, like we're running around, scurrying all over the place without really doing anything. And I think if you're intentional about how you're moving, it's going to garner hope, whether it's in the gym or improving your communication skills. If things are challenging in your life, maybe you're dealing with a certain temptation or a medical illness, or you got passed over for a promotion, but then you don't just wallow there. You think to yourself, okay, well, what would move me towards a better outcome in the future? Well, going to the gym, dialing in my nutrition. Maybe it's working on a communication course or a skill set that I need to develop at work. And as long as there's some sort of meaning attached to that movement, I think that's going to garner additional hope and optimism. It's when that hope is gone and that optimism is gone, guys fall into depression, even suicidal thoughts and actions. And man, I just can't help but think those guys need to find some fulfillment in their movement.
And we make it worse, right? Like, we're talking about some of that validation that feels good. It might feel good to see those high downloads, never, even though you never share them with me, but I'm assuming it's always the AMAs, is the
Always,
top ones, but yeah,
always the
but
the only the next one is always greater than the previous one,
yeah, but
except for when Sean's on.
even,
Just kidding.
sorry, Sean. Uh, but even like I do this, man. Like I get a really powerful message. I got in some rants inside the Iron Council in the last like couple Friday calls, because I thought the conversation was kind of going off target, and I don't know, did my soapbox thing. And I got tons of messages like, dude, Kip, you're on fire. Like that was, and I screenshot those. Why? Because like sometimes when I have a bad day, I look through my Kip, you're amazing gallery. And I know it sounds silly, but like it makes me feel good. But in the same breath, I'm like, God, man, maybe I shouldn't even be doing that, But then you get a negative message or something doesn't go out at work. We don't stop it there, right? The meaning we add to it is way greater than a guy doesn't like me or a guy, criticized me or it didn't go well at work. The meaning that we put on it was, I got this response and it means this. And then like we blow it up and it's just like no one sees us as valuable.
Right.
My wife doesn't love me. Well, she didn't say that. She just said that you're a pain in the butt, right? But it's always just so much, we make it so much bigger than it really is, but it's hard. I don't even
The
know.
podcast
I
that
just feel
came
like
out yesterday with Michael Hyatt is all about the stories that we tell ourselves. And he talks a lot about the meaning that we assign to the experiences that we have. But, I would say with your files of, hey, Kip, you're amazing. I don't think there's anything wrong inherently with that. I just don't
You
know
do
if
it too?
well, I wouldn't say I save it
Come on,
necessarily,
come on, admit
but
it.
I look,
I'm
but I
just
won't, I
joking.
don't save them, but I won't lie that when somebody says, hey, Ryan, you're awesome, I'm like, cool, a little shot of dopamine. And I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah,
The problem
yeah,
is it's
totally.
not very long lasting. It's like short hits. So you need a lot of it consistently to feel good about yourself. And I think it's a
Mm,
little bit of this dopamine and these hormones that fire in our brains that make us feel good. I think just intuitively that if that's what you're feeling off of, you're going to need greater comments by people you perceive to be of greater worth more frequently in order to get the same
because
rush that
it's
you did before.
yeah, because the
Yeah.
baseline is like, oh, this is just normal. Now I
Right.
need way better, yeah,
Yeah.
compliments
Yeah.
now. That's true.
So
Mm,
what I would suggest is not that it's bad, but that there's a greater source of fuel for you. And I think that's derived from God. I think that's our divine
yeah,
nature. Like you are a son of God, an all-knowing,
that's
all-powerful
pretty amazing.
being, and he chose to create you. You're a son of God. You have worth inherent just because of that. And then next in that hierarchical structure is being able to validate yourself. I
Yeah.
was at the gym this morning and I've really been hitting it hard over the past couple of months, especially locking in my diet, going to the gym every day. And I was looking in the gym. I'm like, dang, Ryan, you look pretty good.
Yeah.
And I didn't need you to tell me that. I didn't need other people to tell me that. Hey, it feels good, but I could tell myself that. And then the rest of the
Yeah.
story is you look good because you've really put in a lot of effort over the past several months. So again, that hierarchical structure is God, which is unwavering. It does not flinch. He does not flinch. He does not move. It's unwavering. And then it's yourself because of your divine nature. And then a lower tier, not unimportant, is that other people around you lifting you up, building you up as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man.
Mm.
Let's get to some questions today.
Yeah, love it. So we're going to fill, we had one question left over from last week from our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/order man. We'll wrap up that question. Then we'll jump into some questions from our brotherhood, the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right. Michael Gorham on the Facebook group. How do we save our young men, sons? And can you paint the picture of the world we live in if we don't?
Yeah, so this was a question I asked you to hold out because we were running up against time and I wanted to give a good answer. How do we save our young men? A lot of the times what I see, and I made this post on Twitter and I think I then copied it over to Instagram. So if you aren't following me on either, it's at Ryan Mickler. And I suggested that when we ask questions like that, usually we're looking for the silver bullet, the one thing that's just beyond our reach that we haven't done before that
That's going
we
to make the
can
difference.
implement that'll make a difference in a very short amount of time. And unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. And I think the reason there's no silver bullet is because there's so many other people actively working against a noble and righteous mission, result, efforts, outcome. And so not only are you contending with your own natural self, you're also contending against millions of other people who are misguiding, misleading, and misdirecting our youth, especially in some very large institutions that have a lot of influence. Academia, from kindergarten all the way through post secondary education and higher, to the government, and even the medical community. So, how are you going to combat that with a silver bullet, with this magical phrase or magical action that if you just do this one thing? I was watching Moana with my kids the other day. If you guys haven't seen that movie, that's a really good movie. I really like that movie. And what happens in the movie, without trying to spoil anything, is Maui, this half god, half human mythical creature guy, not creature, human, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, he steals what's called the heart of Tafiti. And because he steals the heart of Tafiti, everything around the environment is going bad. Like the fruit's going bad, everything's dying, the fish are dying off, the oceans are going toxic. And Moana is tasked with restoring the heart of Tafiti. And the minute that she restores the heart of Tafiti, the darkness subsides and the plants start to grow and the fruits and the vegetables are abundant and the fish return and everything is wonderful. Based on one certain act in one certain moment that just fixes everything. Great fairy tale doesn't work like that. So what I would suggest is that you take what we're talking about and you implement it starting with the lowest common denominator, which is you. How do we save our sons? The better question is, how do you save yourself? How do you fix your own deficiencies? Are you fat? Are you out of shape? Are you overweight? Are you broke? Are you a poor communicator? Do you hurt other people? Are you tempted by things that don't serve you well? Do you take advantage of others? What are the things that we do in our own lives that we need to repair first? I don't think we're on to the greater task until we start tackling those issues. And I'm not saying you have to have them perfect, because the world has been introduced to some imperfect men who have done some wonderful things. But I do believe you have to be on the path. Now, from there, we start to influence our closest ecosystem, if you will, and that's our families. It's your sons, it's your daughters, it's your wife, and then it goes into the community, and it's serving, and it's coaching, and it's teaching, and it's mentoring, and it's educating, and it's getting involved in politics. And I know it's not sexy. It's not like restoring the heart of Tafiti. It's not this one moment. It's every single day. What are we doing to make ourselves better men? What are we doing to serve and edify and uplift those around us? If you do that, someone's going to see that. And if somebody else sees that, then someone else is going to see that, and someone else is going to see that. And before you know it, we have millions of men who are fixing themselves. They're fit. They're financially stable. They communicate well. They have noble and righteous ambitions and intentions and actions. They're inspiring other people to do the same. And we have millions of men who are doing that all over the planet. We can't help but change the culture that way. It doesn't come from prison reform or pouring more money into social workers instead of police officers. We can address some of that. But man, we really need to get to the heart of the issue, which is our own soul, and then start to help other people mend their souls.
Ryan, would you dive into, because you made a distinction, we're not perfect, but we need to be on the path. And I'd like you to explain, what does it mean to be on the path? Because I do feel like we might hear what you just said and think, okay, well, my house looks this way and my kids are behaved, and that's the focus, right? And I think being on the path is a little bit different than that. So would you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I want to clarify. You said, so are you asking when can we start focusing outward versus focusing on ourselves?
No, what I'm trying to get to is I think we have a tendency to think that our circumstances, like, okay, well, I need to be perfect, and I need to do these things, and then my kids are going to act this way, and my home's going to be this way. But you said this point, but we're not perfect, but we need to be on the path. So what does it mean to be on the path specifically?
So for me, again, I've talked about alcoholism, and I only bring it kind of, I don't want to beat a dead horse on it. And I don't want you to think I'm using it to garner, attention or anything like that. That is one thing I'm aware of, but I bring it up because I know it's something a lot of guys are dealing with. And it's something obviously that's very close to me. When I decided, that I was going to stop drinking, I didn't actually come forward and tell the Iron Council right away. I waited several months because I didn't feel right explaining what was going on in my life without actually walking towards the path to improvement. And after a couple of months, I told the guys in the Iron Council, and I wasn't perfect. I didn't suggest that I was free from the burden or the temptation of alcohol. I just said, hey, here's something I struggle with. And for the last 2 months, here are the active steps that I've been taking. And here's what's worked well for me. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not perfect. I'm not over it. In fact, just the other day, I was in the grocery store getting some groceries for dinner, And I walked past the alcohol aisle and I was like, having a drink right now would be like just getting a couple shots of, some whiskey or something. That'd be really nice. Like I would actually like to do that. And nobody would know. And so like that temptation is still, I didn't do that, fortunately, but that temptation is still there for me. I'm imperfect. And yet I'm constantly fighting to do what I believe is right. And that's what I mean. Is that you're aware of your imperfections. You've come to terms with them. You've put a plan in place to address them, and you're actively working on solving or filling those gaps. That's what I mean by being in the path.
It's perfect.
And you know what?
Thanks.
If I ever slipped, and I might, like, I'm not going to say I won't, but if I ever slip with alcohol, does that then disqualify me to talk with people about how to overcome alcohol abuse? I don't think so. I don't think it disqualifies me. I think I'm going to be humble and honest about that. Hey, guys, I slipped. Here's how I slipped. Here's why I messed up. Here's what I was experiencing. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it so it doesn't happen again. It doesn't disqualify you from helping other people. You just need to be honest with it.
Yeah. One quick thought for I already forgot his name, for Michael on this subject of like our boys and how we show up as fathers. And to your point, for me, I get wrapped up in circumstances of how things should be and how my kids should be. We talked about this earlier, right? It's like, well, if I'm being a good father, then my kids are going to be like this, and they're going to be behaved, and they're going to show up in the world in a really powerful way. They're going to be highly successful. And if they're not, well, then I screwed up, right? And I did something wrong or whatever. And one thing that has really, like, I've gotten present to is the most important thing. And I know this is a little bit of semantics, and I've gotten feedback like people struggle with when I use this example because I can't, but I don't know a better word. So I'm open to your suggestions here, Ryan. But seeing our boys and our children as whole and complete, seeing them as humans, not obstacles, not a problem. And that was probably one of the biggest things over the past couple of years that I've really gotten present to, that I can't see when my daughter gets overly emotional. I can't see her as a problem. And I have to see her as a human, complete, like God made her complete. She's amazing as she is. And she's on a path of her own, trying to learn. And my interaction with her needs to be from that mindset, not from a mindset that she's wrong or she's broken. Now, I want to be clear. I'm okay disagreeing with her actions, but I can't make her wrong, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
as long as I'm doing that, I'm going to show up powerfully as a father, and I'm going to make the necessary right actions. And most importantly, she's going to feel seen, heard, and understood and loved. And that is like priority number one.
I think that's powerful. I do disagree with whole and complete, but I see where you're coming from. Let me give an analogy that might help us flesh that idea out a little bit. So one thing I've been working on over the past little bit is cooking. Like I've been doing a lot more cooking, and I've actually come to enjoy a lot of it. And so yesterday I was making,
and that's why you're losing weight, because it tastes so bad.
So bad I don't even want to eat it. It's true. It's true. My family can attest to it. So yesterday I woke up and I like to make a Sunday breakfast for the past, 3-4 weeks or whatever, minus the vacation that we were on. And I was going to make this Western omelet in the Instant Pot, which the Instant Pot is an amazing, amazing tool. Like this thing is incredible. Yeah. So my daughter got me a recipe book for Christmas. I pulled up, I'm like, this is a Western omelet in the Instant Pot. So I got all of the ingredients together, the eggs, the bell peppers, the onions, the different spices, the ham, the bacon, all the stuff that I had. And from an ingredient standpoint, it was whole and complete. I had all of the ingredients. Would I just mix them together in a haphazard way and not cook them and eat them? No, probably not, because that wouldn't be healthy for me and it wouldn't be very good. So what do we do with the ingredients? Well, we take all of the whole and complete ingredient list and we combine them in a certain order, and then we put them under heat, and then it cooks and it's safe and it's edible and it's healthy. And then we have the Western omelet. and then you eat it, and hopefully you did it right and it's delicious. So this is the analogy I would use, is that our children are whole and complete. Sure, they have all of the biological makeup and the intelligence, to be able to develop, but there's an incubation period there, and we are the chef.
Yeah.
Right?
Unfinished still. Yeah.
Yes. Unfinished, immature, not ready. And we are the chef putting all of the ingredients in the right order, hopefully. Okay. So here's to go off that analogy just a little bit more. So I did what the instructions said, and it said, I think 5 or 6 minutes in the Instant Pot. And I opened it up and I looked at it, and it looked pretty delicious on top. And I cut into it, and the eggs were still runny. It wasn't ready. I followed all the instructions, but it wasn't ready. Something broke down in the system. So look, all the right ingredients, I followed the system, and yet it still didn't work out. So I had to adapt. I had to adjust, and I ended up taking it out and frying it on a fry pan, and it worked out okay. But yeah, I see what you're saying with whole and complete. And I would say we have whole and complete potential. It's just unrealized. And we need to, as parents, develop that potential in the right way.
And I like that. I like that because that analogy works out perfectly, because you're not looking in the Instant Pot and going, God, it's a bad egg.
Yeah.
No,
right.
It's a great egg.
Yeah. You just need to cook it.
We just did to cook it right. Right. Like, or we need to cook longer, or we need to pivot and adjust. Like, the egg's not bad. It's a good egg.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. All right. What else?
Right.
Are we on to the first question?
Foundry.
Hey, I got to say on these questions, I'm going to try to do a little bit shorter than I normally do, because there's so many good questions. And then I just wanted to make a quick mention that the caliber of questions we got in the Iron Council today were phenomenal. So let's try to get through as many as we can in the next 30 minutes or so.
Okay. Mike Roos, how do you sift through the huge pile of self-help for men and really dial in what works best for you and start applying it? I find myself getting lost in the content and getting excited to add something to my tool belt, only for it to get lost with the next thing. Good question.
It is a good question. And what I would say is, if you're not doing the system that you've agreed to do to its fullest and complete, then don't move on to something else yet. So you're in the Iron Council and you're following the battle planning system. So I have to ask, let me see your vision. Let me see what your objectives are. Let me see what your tactics are. Let me see if you're hitting your checkpoints. Let me see your after action reviews. Like, let me see all of that. Let me see how your attendance is on your battle teams, your calls. Let me see what your Friday attendance is. Let me see what your engagement in the Foundry, which is where we do all of our communication. Let me look at all of that. In fact, you look at it all. I'm not going to look. You look at it and ask yourself, are you 100 on all of those? If the answer is no, then why in the world are you going to move on to something else?
Really?
You're not even doing your current system at 100%. And am I saying ours is the best system ever devised and there's nothing else? No, I'm saying this is the one you chose. So dive in 100% and give it a chance. And now look, if there's little things that are complementary to the system, sure. But if they're going to detract from the system that you've agreed upon, if they're going to distract, or if they're at odds with the system, bro, you don't even know if the system works. You're not using it correctly. So whatever you decide to use, whether it's the battle plan or this guy's that or that person's this, go all in 100% for the designated time, and then we can evaluate from there. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that's great. Jim Quick, guest on the podcast years back, I believe. It's been a little bit.
Yeah.
Wrote a book, Limitless. In his book, this is his specialty, right? How do people learn and obtain information? He says when you're reading and studying content, you're always asking yourself 3 questions continually. How is this applicable to me? What am I going to do about it? And when am I going to start? Period. Knowledge with action. Knowledge is not power. What you're pretty much saying is you need to act on it. And so if you're not taking action on it, then you're right, Mike. We're going to read the next thing and then read the next thing, forget the thing that we studied the time before, and it's just knowledge in, knowledge out. So always be asking yourself, all right, I just read something. Okay, awesome. How's this applicable to me? What am I going to do about it? And when am I going to start? And if the answer is like, no, 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 then why are you reading it? That's kind of how I feel about it. So if you're being really intentional about some of the self-help content, or even what we're doing in the Iron Council, it requires action on your part.
Well, and we need to be careful of avoiding one fallacy that a lot of us run into, and that is that action equals prudence.
Mm,
We believe that if we're moving, then we're moving the needle. No,
good point.
you're just moving. You're not moving the needle. You might be, but we don't know just because
busy.
you're moving.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm on a very tight training program with regards to lifting weights and my nutrition. And the other day I was really bored, and I had already done my workout. I do my workouts in the morning, and I was thinking, man, I'll just go back in this afternoon. Why? Because I think if I go back in, like, I'm going to get stronger. I mean, I'm going to burn some more calories, sure, but that might actually be detrimental to the program because I'm going to burn my muscles up. So why? Well, because I think if I'm moving and I'm active and then it's better. No, not always. Not always. Yeah. So
that's
so
so
be
true.
cautious of that.
Well, in that same analogy, right? Like I have a short workout. The days where I might have an hour and a half, take my time, resting a lot. And then sometimes I'm like, I got 1 hour. This is what I love about my watch, right? Because I make an agreement with myself. I got a 45-second rest. That's it. The minute that timer hits 45 seconds,
go.
It's the next set.
Yep.
Period. It's the best workouts when I do that. The best.
Of course.
Highly intentional. I'm not wasting any time. It's moving the right needle.
Right.
Kevin Bovey, ways to stay motivated and maintain discipline while not seeing progress or desired results. Ways to stay motivated and maintain discipline.
Well, the ways to stay motivated are get around motivating factors. So there's people who are going to motivate you. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a program, maybe it's a course. These are all things that are going to motivate you. Disciplined is just the willpower to do it. So you just got to bear down, grit your teeth and just get after it. If you listen to last Friday's podcast, it's called Discipline is Overrated. And a lot of people took issue with that. They're like, well, tell that to Jocko, tell that to Goggins, tell that to this person. Notice what I didn't say. I did not say discipline is unnecessary. I said it's overrated. What do I mean by that? Well, if you listen to the podcast, there's a 3-part framework for success. First, this is hierarchical. First, motivation. You need to be motivated by it. It needs to be charged. It needs to be emotional. You need to be excited about it. And you also need motivation. This is why I cringe a little bit when guys say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Well, bro, you need to be religious because you're a human being and you need the systems and practices in place. You need to listen to your preacher because he's going to inspire you and motivate you when you're tempted not to follow that path. You need to be around other people who believe like you because they're going to motivate you to make good choices.
Power and banding.
Yes.
Yeah, banding with others.
So, and people say, well, all the worst things in the world are done through religion. Maybe not all of them. Sure. But some, yeah, maybe. But also there's some good things and you're a human being capable of discerning between the two. So we have motivation. That's the first. Then we have discipline, which is willpower. And we know there's been enough research on willpower that it's like a tank. The things that are hardest you should do in the morning because that's when your willpower is the strongest. And then throughout the day and many decisions that we need to make, our tank is depleted. The third component is systems. And this I would say is the strongest. Systems and processes in place to ensure that you're going to follow through on your commitments. So it might be coaching, it might be a course, it might be a program, it might be whatever, and you're going to follow that system to the T and you're going to create flow and friction. So flow is making the things that you want to do very easy to do. So if you want to go to the gym in the morning, you better know what you're going to do the night before. You better have your clothes laid out. You better have your protein and your supplement stuff ready to go. This is all creating flow. It's making it easier for you to do the thing. Friction is eliminating or putting barriers in place that make it harder to do something. So if you don't want to drink alcohol, then you shouldn't have alcohol in your house. Because in order to get alcohol, then you're going to need to get changed. You're going to need to get in your car. You're going to need to drive to wherever you drive. You're going to need to pick it up. You're going to need to drive home, and then you can drink it. Like, that's friction. And the more you can place that friction in place, the better off you're going to be to keep you from doing the things that you don't want to be doing. So how do you stay motivated and disciplined? systems. You got to have all three. Without all three of them, you're leaving some room on the table.
Yeah. Rapid fire comment for Kevin here, because he says seeing progress and desired results. Like, how do I do this when I'm not seeing progress and desired results? Kevin, I would suggest that most of us, that's the lie that we tell ourselves, not to act on the very thing that we know we should do. So when my alarm goes off and I don't want to go to the gym, I have to justify not going to the gym because I know I should go to the gym. And the excuse I might come up with is, well, you know what? I'm not really seeing the results. This isn't really working. That's part of the excuse. Now, if you're not doing that and you're really logically thinking in your mind, like, hey, this isn't working, then follow, we'll steal something from Jordan Peterson as his book. Then pivot, and always whatever you pivot to has to be harder or equally as hard as the thing that you're doing. So we're not saying don't pivot, right? If you're not seeing results, you actually should change. Just be careful that that's not the excuse you're using not to execute.
It is excuses. It's also expectations.
Yeah.
Right. If you're overweight and you think, well, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 2 months. Are you sure? Like, I mean, it's possible. Is that going to produce the results you want? Probably not. So that's a faulty expectation. So how do you get accurate expectations? You work with somebody.
Yeah. Someone that
who's
knows,
done it.
Get a coach.
Yeah. Get a coach. And that coach is going to say, like this morning, I went up a couple pounds over the weekend, but I was actually pretty locked in on my diet for the weekend. And I sent Johnny a message. I'm like, man, I didn't think I'd go up in weight. That was frustrating to me. He's like, yeah, I know it's frustrating. Yeah. He's like, it probably has to do with your high sodium intake throughout the weekend and you're retaining water. So just drink more water, flush some of that. Let's lock the diet back in and all's good. And he got me back on the path. That's part of the system, having a coach to make sure your expectations are realistic.
See, that's a way better response than what I got from Johnny's just like, stop eating donuts. So
I don't eat donuts. So he doesn't have to say that to me. Lock your shit in, Kip. Come on now.
All right. Jarrett Storrell, with the first 30 days complete in the quarter, we have seen a few men shift into a negative mindset in regards to their goals. What tactics do you use to keep positive and a healthy mindset? Kind of similar to our previous question, but.
What tactics do I use?
Yeah, well, to keep positive, healthy.
You got to relay it back to your vision. Like I don't know why you'd be negative on your goals. Maybe I don't understand the question, or maybe they're negative on themselves because they're not realizing their goals as much as they'd like.
Yeah, I'm assuming 30 days in, they're just not executing, right? Like they're not seeing the results, or they're out of integrity a little bit probably on their commitments, and they're getting negative.
So recommit. Pull up your battle plan, look at your vision. Is it still charged for you? Are you still excited about it? If not, revisit it, see if you need to tweak it and adjust it. If it is, okay, start thinking about that. You know, how are your kids going to be served by you being 50 pounds overweight? They're not. Are you embarrassed when you look at yourself in the mirror? Does your wife not want to have sex with you anymore because she's not physically attracted? Yes. Okay, those are things that maybe would get you fired up to make some changes, right? So figure out what's keeping you from making those changes. And the motivation has to be a stronger source of fuel than the fear or pain of moving forward. Right. So when I don't want to get up in the morning and I'm laying there in bed, I'm like, I don't want to get up and go to the gym. I'm like, no, I want to feel good about myself and I want to look good and I want to have energy and I want to be attractive. And I just want to reach my potential. Oh shit. Gosh, dang it. Now I got to get out of bed. You know, like I convince myself, because what I want is more important. What I want in the long term is more important than the weakness that is talking to me right now, which is be lazy. You don't need to do this. But I also know that's my natural tendency. I know that about myself, and I know that isn't me. Like that's not me talking. Yeah. It's a part of me, but that's not me. And there's something, whether it's Satan or just the natural man, at least this is how I frame it, saying, no, sleep in. No, don't pick up that piece of trash you just stepped over. You know, no, you don't worry about that person's feelings. Oh, you feel compelled to call somebody? No, you're too busy. Don't call that person. That's not me. That's something else speaking into my life, and it's not good. And I've otherized it, to use a popular woke term. I've otherized it. It's not
I haven't
me.
heard that before.
And that's what
Otherwise,
I'm going. Well, when you otherize people or dehumanize people, that's kind of the concept, but that's something else. And I'm going to fight actively against that. And I'm going to be who I really am. I'm going to uncover and discover and build who I really am.
great. Yeah. Christopher Kroom, name something from your youth that might not be well known, but still affects you today. If it's positive, how does it play into your daily life? If it's negative, what tactics do you use to overcome the existing barrier day to day?
So I looked at these questions ahead of time, and I normally don't do that, but I wanted to see what the questions were. And I thought long and hard over the past couple of days about something from my youth that's not well known. I actually don't really have anything. I mean, there's things, obviously, experiences and, stories that I have, but there isn't any like one big thing that's unknown. I've been pretty open about that. But I would say, to go back to the alcoholism, uh, my dad was an alcoholic. One of my stepfathers was an alcoholic. I was so young. I don't consciously remember thinking, oh, alcohol is okay. Or I don't remember thinking that, but I do wonder if I was influenced by that. Not even wonder. Of course I was influenced by that. And I thought to myself, am I really an alcoholic? Or am I just somebody who learned from other men that it's okay to drink when you're stressed and then to treat others poorly? I don't really know the answer to that, but it is something worth considering. And so how have I dealt with it is actually just realizing it. That's the biggest thing. We're talking a lot about shadow work in the Iron Council right now. And that's one of the biggest things, is actually coming to terms with parts of your life, experiences, stories that you have repressed to protect yourself or maybe protect other people. And as we're talking about integration with the shadow, it's becoming familiar with those things so you can actually do something about it. And that's what I want. I want to know where it comes from so that I can actively deal with it. But if I don't know what I'm facing, how could I ever arm myself with tools to combat it?
Yeah. Not only that, you're almost subconsciously making a decision, not even understanding where it's rooted in.
Yes. You're going to miss the target.
Yeah.
You might employ all these strategies and all these tactics and all of this stuff that's going to help you get on the path. But if you're not actually addressing the real issue, then you've missed the target. And we'll call it the adversary. You might slow the adversary down or subdue the temptation temporarily, but certainly not over the long haul.
Yeah. Jesse Clock, what's a great place to start being a leader on your first day at a new company?
Be led. Like follow.
So
follow.
true.
Just follow. Be humble.
Humble,
open,
learn,
right? Receptive.
listen.
And not just that. And I'm going to say this too, is that listening is not passive, it's active. So you're actively listening, but then there's another component that we failed to talk about. You actually need to act on it.
Yeah.
Because what good is it, Kip, if you're my supervisor, to listen to everything that you have to say and then never act on it? So the best way to lead is to listen to your leaders. Ask them questions if you don't know a specific thing, and then apply it and see if it works. And I think that's the best way to do it. The other way to do it is to realize, and I talk about this in my book, The Masculinity Manifesto, is that leadership comes before the title. So if I'm sitting next to Joe, who's starting same day as me, or maybe he even started after me, and Kip, you explain something to me, and I start working and doing that, but then I see Joe do it a different way, I might say, hey, Joe, why are you doing it that way? Because first you want to figure it out, right? And he says, oh, I'm doing it. Okay, maybe he has a good idea. That would be good to know. Or maybe he's not doing it correctly. And so it'd be like, hey, just so you know, like I thought the same thing, but we do it this way because X, Y, and Z. Can I help you with that? Can I show you something I learned? You can do that without having some sort of title. The problem a lot of guys have is they think to themselves, well, That's not my job. They don't pay me enough to do that. That's above my pay grade. These are all terms that will help you realize that you're deflecting opportunities to lead. It's not they don't pay me enough. It's not my responsibility. I mean, maybe it's true. Or maybe you could say, there's an opportunity I could step into and I could really serve and help these people and I can serve and help the company. Those are the people who get promotions. Those are the people who go on and start businesses.
Yeah, it's totally true. Oh, they don't pay me enough. Yeah, exactly. And that's why you'll continue making what you make.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're
not willing to do it.
To actually, to show up powerfully. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to point it out for Jesse, it's like the opposite of what Ryan just said is a disaster. Do not come in going, I know everything, man. I'm going to stroke my ego. I'm going to prove these guys that I know my stuff. I'm going to lead from the front. I'm going to overly guide and direct. Oh man, you're going to rub people wrong, especially being the new person. So man, just listen to what Ryan just said. It's highly valuable. And I don't consider myself like an amazing leader. I get feedback that I'm decent. But as an example of this, when I sold and started at my current job, I had guys on my team didn't even know I was their boss for months. Intentionally. Because I was like, no, I want to get in the trenches and lead through influence, not show up and say, oh, I got this title, so listen to me. Yeah. I wanted to be a natural thing where they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to Kip because you know what he's talking about. But that takes time. And it has to be rooted in what? Me caring, not me looking good or anything else. And that takes time for people to know that your efforts are rooted in servant leadership, not rooted in propping yourself up.
There's a really good question that I like, and for leadership that doesn't sound like a leadership question, but the question is this: what do you think you're going to do about that? So if somebody comes to you with a problem or they're struggling, or maybe they're even just venting, instead of rushing in to save, just say, man, that's tough. What do you think you're going to do about that?
Yeah.
A variation of that might be, oh man, that's quite the dilemma. How are you going to fix that? Or, yeah, that's a tough spot you're in. How are you going to fix it? What are you going to do? Those are really, really good questions. Because a couple of things. Number one, it's not an assumption that you know everything, right? So you're not getting arrogant. I mean, this is even great with a spouse. We know all the time, our wives are not looking for us to fix things. So sometimes the fix is just asking that question. She might come to you and say, hey, I'm dealing with this, or I'm struggling with this, or, my girlfriend's, being a pain in the ass because of this, or my boss, or whatever. And a solution might just be, whoa, man, you must feel bad. How are you going to deal with that? And she's like, I don't know. I'm just not really, I don't know. It's like, yeah, well, if you need any help, let me know. But yeah, I could definitely see how you're in a tough spot on that one. And that's it. That is so potent. That is so powerful. She just needs to be heard. And also in a more of a boss professional type context, you're giving somebody the opportunity. You're basically saying, hey, you know what? I trust you to come up with an answer that I think will work. What a great compliment. You come to me, Kip, and you're like, hey man, we're dealing with this thing in the Iron Council. And I say to you, yeah, that is tough. What do you think we should do about that? That's a compliment.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think it will be received as a compliment. Yeah. I'm telling you, I care about what you have to say, Kip. You're an important part of this team, and I care about your contribution to it. And I think you can come up with a solution. And then you come up with an answer. I'm like, cool. Let's try it. Let's see how it works. And then you help them implement that. Holy cow. That's empowering.
Yeah. Totally true. Drew, how do you define good income in today's economy? Is it 2x your household needs? 10x? Thank you.
I like this question. Because I think it's a common question, but it's not a great question. It's the wrong question, I should say. Because if you say, what's good income? Inherently, you're saying good compared to what?
Yeah.
Like what good, what compared to me, compared to Kip, compared to somebody who just graduated high school, like good, your parents, good. What do you
Your
mean?
debt.
What
Yeah.
does good mean?
Yeah.
It's all subjective. It's not objective. So the better question is not what is good income, but what kind of income do I need to be making to realize my dreams? That's a well formulated question that's going to lead to result. The first question is going to lead to comparison. Oh, well, Ryan makes $1 million and I don't make $1 million. So am I not a good person, or am I not smart, or I'm not that? That it's got you focused on all the wrong answers.
Yeah.
So you want to ask yourself questions that lead to productive results. So what's a good income should be replaced with what income do I need to achieve my desired results? Now that leads us to start thinking about what our desired results are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh man, I would like to travel. I'd like to have the house paid off. I'd like to have a little money in the bank account.
Flexibility of time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to start a business at some point, have some investments. All right. Now we're talking. Now we're moving into the future about what you want. And then you can reverse engineer and say, this is going to take, a couple $100,000 a year. And right now I'm making 80. So, okay, now we have a deficiency. Okay, what do we need to do to make up that 120, and how long is it going to take, and what strategies are we going to employ, and when can we get started? And now you're moving into things that are action oriented versus kind of stalling your progress, which is like, I just don't make enough money. Kip makes way more than I do. Oh, what? Well, he's not as good as I am. How come he's making that? I just know where that conversation goes. So let's ask a different question on that one.
Yeah. You were quoted in a book. Remember this years and years ago? We talked about this. Wealth management. Is it wealth management?
I think you're referring to Austin
book?
Netzley's book, because I've only been quoted in one book ever. So I think it's the one right there. I think that's what you're referring to.
One thing I got from that book, because he was a podcast a long time ago. Like,
yeah, I think
before,
it's Austin Netzley.
When I was just a listener of the podcast, I remember I read that book, and one of the key things was, what is wealth? What is wealth?
Yeah.
And it was funny because I remember going to Asia and going, hey, Asia, what does it mean to be wealthy? And she was like, go to Europe twice a year, whenever we want, have enough money for that. And you're like, okay, wait, that's more flexibility of time than it is really cash. Right? So define what wealth is, but the other part is define the cost. That's the other thing. Like the last time we did a Utah meetup, I think or maybe it wasn't the last time before, I asked the question, who wants to be a millionaire? Everyone's hands goes up. And then you start listing all the requirements to be a millionaire. People don't want to be a millionaire. Most people don't want to do it. They're unwilling to pay the price. So get clear too, right? Oh yeah, I want to be wealthy. Okay, awesome. And what price are you willing to pay? And if you're not willing to pay the price, then let it go and get clear on what you're willing to pay the price for. Otherwise, you're just stressed out all the time.
It's unnecessary. Well, I think you hit it, but I would take issue with what they don't want it. They do want it. They're just not willing to do what needs to be done. Right. And I do like what you said too. If you're like, then let it go. And that is huge, because we are conditioned by our environment. So in society, it tells you that men are supposed to behave a certain way. We got to make this money. We got to do this. We got to do that. We should not. And all of that stuff, I think, can give us some context and some frameworks on which to build our lives. But a lot of it is faulty. A lot of it is flawed. A lot of it doesn't apply to you. A lot of it is not relevant to you. And so we got to get rid of the shoulds and should nots and the I need tos and everything else, and really determine what it is for you. I had a conversation with my wife, and I'm not going to get into the specifics just because of the privacy of our conversations. But there was something that we were doing that other people were confused by. And she said something interesting, which I totally agreed. And she says, I don't need their approval, and it doesn't matter if it works for other people or not. Like, I thought that was really just a quick little, it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if they understand it. What we do does not need to work for other people. And I thought that was really powerful. I took that away and I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. I don't need other people's approval, and nobody needs to understand it in order for me to do it. That's a good way to live.
Yeah, that's great. Wayne McPherson did a great job, by the way, last Friday, I believe it
He did.
was,
He
on
always
our
does.
Friday
The
call on
week
Iron
before. I
Council.
think the week before.
Yep. How important is it to have men in your corner when you're going through hardship, rather than manning up and facing the challenges alone in silent resolve? Some would say the latter is the sign of sovereignty. What says you?
Well, there's a lot. This was a good question. And at first I was like, no, you need guys in your corner. And I think that you do. I will say that having men in your corner isn't a lack of sovereignty. I mean, you're still choosing who's in your corner. You can still
Yeah.
choose whether or not you accept their advice,
Listen.
or
Yeah.
to the degree that you let them into your life. Like it's still your life. Having other people in your life. Actually, a lot of people in the context of religion, a lot of people will say, well, if you follow religion, it's taking away your sovereignty. Is it? Because
Still, yeah, you still have
you
agency.
chose, right? You're
Yeah.
choosing. And by the way, don't pretend for a second that if you're not what you would call a religious person, that you don't follow some doctrine, not of
Well, you're following
religion
the
necessarily.
doctrine. Yeah,
You're
you're following
following
the doctrine
something,
of your friends,
right?
your own doctrine and religion of your friends that
Right.
aren't religious, and you get together and you say what's right and wrong.
We're all following something. Some of it's conscious and intentional, and others, a lot of it actually is subconscious and unintentional, but you're following something. So just
You
because you're
have a
following,
religion.
well,
Yeah.
people will say, like things about Jordan Peterson, it's like, okay, so are you telling me by this logic that if you listen to Jordan Peterson's conversations, discussions, thoughts, and then you decide to implement some of them, that you no longer have your agency? It's a silly argument.
Yeah.
Okay, so that said, you also should man up. Like if your entire well-being is contingent upon your band of brothers and who's in your corner, holy cow, you're going to find yourself in a really, really bad spot. And
If
there's
you're
some
reliant
times,
on them too much, you mean?
well, yeah, I mean, friends come and go, friends die, who you thought were a friend wasn't a friend, who you didn't know was a friend is a friend. Sometimes you're alone, maybe your buddies can't make it. Like, there's the adage of save yourself, rescue yourself, right? You got to be able to rescue yourself. And I think that's also true. I don't think these two conversations are factors that are at odds with each other. There are times where you need to man up. There's times in my life where I'm down, or I'm sad, or I'm heartbroken, or I'm this, or I'm that. And yet I come on the podcast, or I have a conversation with somebody, and I'm like, yeah, time to man up, time to put on the big boy pants and like get to work, because that's what's required. And those are the commitments I made to myself. I may not feel 100% about doing it. I may be down. I may be dealing with something. Here I am showing up day in and day out, because that's what I said I would do. And I think if you hit on both factors of building a powerful band of brothers and you learn to man up, I think they play off of each other. Because a guy who's capable of taking care of himself and being strong and being capable and doing what needs to be done and managing his emotions is a guy who's going to be an asset in a band of brothers. And a guy who has a band of brothers that are solid and reliable and credible and care about that, they care about you, you're going to now be better equipped to stand on your own 2 feet, which is what you're going to be called to do. They're going to help you up, but at some point they got to let go of your hand, and they got to prop you up and say, okay, now you're on your own. Can you walk? Can you stand? And you should be able to.
Justin Basie, new member of the Iron Council. So working on my contribution quadrant, and I want to take what I teach my 5 middle school health classes and spread it out to more kids other than just my school. I know social media can help, but I'm not on there and I don't know where to start.
Okay, so, but I'm not on there. That's easy. Get on there. So that question's answered. A lot of people say that. It's like, oh, I'd like to work out, but I don't go to the gym. Go to the gym. Okay, so that now that question's answered. Now, where to start? You have the material.
Yeah.
So
You're teaching
take it
You
and
probably have an
start
outline.
sharing it.
Yeah.
Like, don't overthink this. Who was it? Justin? Was it Justin?
Justin. Yep.
Justin, don't overthink this, man. Take the material. You already have it. So take the material and, take a picture, we were out, we were outside with the kids yesterday and we were playing in the snow. And I asked Trish, I'm like, hey, will you just take a couple of pictures of like headshots, just pictures of me out here real quick? She's like, yeah, sure. And she just took, 10, 15 pictures or whatever. And now I have 10 or 15 pictures that I can use. Or when I'm with my friends, do a selfie or whatever. There's so many different, right? So you just get and then now I can craft a caption along with that picture. And where do I get the caption from? Your source material. You already have it written. Or maybe what you can do is you can take out an element of your curriculum and you can just shoot a 30-second video. Hey guys, just wanted to talk with you about health for kids and why it's important, ... and explain yourself and say, so, there you go. Now, what's the next? So you start doing that. So you start sharing content in different ways. And people are scared because they're like, I don't have my message articulated and I don't know if people will resonate with this. And yeah, right. You don't know. So we need to help you define your voice. And you do that by exercising it.
By reps. Yeah.
And then we get to see what people resonate with. Some of it's not going to land. Some of my stuff doesn't land. Others does land. And I know it's going to land. Like I took a picture the other day. We were in Costa Rica and my youngest son, he got elbowed. They were wrestling in the pool and he got elbowed in the face by his older brother. Accidentally. I saw it. It was an accident, but he got elbowed hard in the face and his blood just started dripping and pouring down. And I'm like, come here, let's take a picture. I did that for two reasons. Number one, I took it because I knew it would diffuse the situation. I'm like, that's cool. Let's take a picture of it. And so I took a picture and would show him. And number two, there was a lesson to be learned there that I felt I could share. And so I have this bloody picture of my son and I post that on Instagram with the story, a meaningful, relevant story around my messaging. And I knew 100% people were going to see that picture. They were going to see my caption and that was going to resonate for people. How do I know that? Because I've been doing this for 8 years. I know. And you'll figure that out too as you go, but you have to go. The next thing you do from there. So again, we're going to take the content you already have. We're going to share it in different mediums on different platforms. And then the third component is you have to give people a call to action. So what is it that you want them to do? Is it to follow you on Instagram? Is it to subscribe to a YouTube channel? Is it to go to your website? Is it to sign up for emails? Is it to pick up a free copy of this, simple PDF report on how to get kids healthy? You have to have somewhere to direct them and tell them what to do. And that's how you start. That's exactly how I started Order of Man. And it's all built on that foundation. Take what I know, share it in a meaningful way, ask people to do something with it.
Pierre Bonhomme, how do you convince your family to make, I had to look this up, or actually I had to think about it, how to make a SHTF plan, so when crap hits the fan plan, to prepare for the worst, when they don't follow financial news and think status quo is fine?
What was the word he used? Convince?
Convince your family.
Okay, so I would say this. Number one, is it your job? If it's your immediate family, your wife and kids, definitely. If it's your mom and your dad and your siblings and your brothers and your aunts and your uncles, probably not. And there's not a whole lot you can do in that situation. So I just want to clarify. So let's just assume it's your wife and your children. First, your kids don't really have a say in the matter. Like they're going to be.
Now we're talking about your wife,
right? Because that's like they don't watch the news. They're kids. Like, why would they watch the news? Okay. We have to get to the root of why she thinks everything is okay and why she's comfortable with not preparing. Could it be that she doesn't want to detract from time that it would take to do that? Could it be that she knows how much energy it's going to require, or maybe even how much money? Could it be that you've been yapping your mouth about all of these things for decades and she just doesn't believe that you're going to do anything with it? So all she needs to do is say, I'm not interested. And then you give up in the next 30 days and she can quit hearing about it from you. I'm guilty of that. Like, what is the real issue? I don't know what it is. I'm making some hypothesis based on what I think it could be, But if you can get to the real issue, whether it's a trust issue with you and credibility, or whether it's something like money or resources or time and attention and energy, and it could be something as benign as she's just not interested in it, not into it, and she just has faith that you'll do it. And in that case, maybe she's right. And so do it. It's okay. Like, she doesn't have to be involved in everything. I know plenty of spouses who aren't necessarily involved in finances or other aspects of the relationship, but you get them somewhat involved so they know, like, hey, hon, here's what we're doing with the financial situation. Hey, I have this investment, or this investment opportunity is available, or hey, we just paid off the debt. So maybe you just have to do things and then enlighten her and share them with her so that she sees it's getting done, but she's never going to be that interested in it. With the kids, you just make it a game. That's the biggest thing. Here's a game that you could play if you want to talk about exit strategies, let's say in case of emergency or a fire or an intruder or whatever it might be. Like, create a game. Go outside to a certain tree that you have outside and say, all right, kids, I want everybody to start in your room. And I've got a radio. I went to Walmart and I bought radios for us. So I've got a radio. So here's a radio for you. Here's a radio for you. Here's a radio for you. I've got my radio. I want you to listen to it. I'm going to be outside. On the count of 3, I'm going to say go. And the first person to get outside wins. That's it. And then after they get outside, say, hey, you won. Here's your sucker, or here's a Matchbox car. Matchbox would do it for my son. Maybe some sort of little stuffed animal would do it for my daughter. So you get them something and you give them a prize and you help them feel good about it and you make it fun. And then you ask them, like, okay, what was your path? Well, I went down the stairs, but I didn't go out that door because I knew if I did, I have to go around the back of the house. So I went out the front door because of this. And then you change it. You're like, all right, well, everybody start in your room or start in the living room, but you can't use these 2 doors, or you can't use doors at all. Now, what are you going to do? And you time them. It's just fun. With kids, just make it fun. That's easy.
Yeah. Step up your game, start a fire in your house, in the kitchen, so they don't exit that way. Dude, super fun.
This is exactly how you do it. Or if you want to create like a bug out bag, like, get them involved, like, get them their own bag.
Yeah.
Right. So, hey, son, we're going to go to Walmart. You pick out your own bag. So you pick out a bag and you pick out the things that you want in it. You've got a $30 budget. Here we go. What do you think should be included? You go have fun at Walmart. You spend $30 and you get a bag and you get some scissors, maybe a flashlight, maybe some sort of blanket, a little bit of prepackaged food that's going to preserve. Like, make it fun. That's easy.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Dex Reese, how do you get your heart to catch up to your head? Meaning, intellectually, you know what you should do, but your heart's affections aren't set on doing it yet. Similar to our earlier question, but.
Well, I think you should engage your heart. I mean, that's actually the first step. It's not a subsidiary. Like, it is the first step. I've been re-listening to Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and he's been on the podcast before. 20-year FBI hostage negotiator. Very powerful book. Again, it's called Never Split the Difference. And he talks about our brain, and this has been studied enough that we know that we are not rational creatures. We are emotional, and then we try to support our emotional decisions logically and rationally, but we make the emotional decision first. People say, well, I'm logical. I'm a man. I'm logical. No, you're not. You're emotional like everybody else. And then you convince yourself you're logical by playing, mental
justifying
gymnastics
the emotion
to
with
explain.
Logic. Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, should, could, would, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is true. And if that's the case, fine. Let's work on that. Let's recognize that we're all emotional and let's figure out how to use it. So when you're crafting a vision for yourself or something that you want, like, here's a simple example. I would like to have 6-pack abs this year. Okay. And I'll tell you why. It's not because that means I'm, 5% body fat and it's none of that. You know what it is? I'm going to walk by the shower. I'm going to look at myself, feel pretty good. Here's one. My dick's going to look a little bigger because I don't have an extra, 20 or 30 pounds of fat in the midsection. Like, there's reasons that nobody's willing to say, but everybody knows. I'm going to look good naked. Sex is going to be better. My dick's going to look bigger. Like, That's why.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like that's completely, those are good reasons. Those are fine. There's nothing wrong with those reasons. If that's the case, then every time I don't want to get out of bed and do abs, I'm going to say, you know what? I want to look good naked. I want my dick to look bigger. So I'm going to do these abs. Period.
Yeah.
End of story.
There's your guys' soundbite for the week. Just that segment right there.
Look, people
I love
are
it.
afraid of saying things, but Kip, you can't say that thought
So
hasn't
true.
crossed your mind.
Of
Every man
course.
listening has had that
Of
thought
course.
cross his mind,
Yeah.
right?
I
He
mean,
wants
that's
to be,
why
he
a lot
wants
of
the
guys go to the
stamina.
gym.
He wants the stamina to take his wife and, you know, get a little assertive
Lavish.
within
Yeah.
those healthy boundaries, right? Like, come on, we all know what we want, and it's emotionally driven. So it needs to start there. So your vision has to start with an emotionally charged vision. And once it does, then you can start building the logic and the tactics and everything else behind it. So what do you do when your heart's not quite in it? And I'll tell you why is because getting to 6-packs, abs, although it was emotionally charged, is hard to do. And it doesn't happen as often or as quickly as you'd like. So what do? You tap back into your emotionally charged vision. Hey, Ryan, remember you're doing this for these reasons. And if you can get it back to that, then you can get your heart back in it. And I'll be honest, sometimes your heart's not going to be in it. So what? So what? Does your heart need to be in it to do something? No. You need to be in it. You need to be doing it. So realize that, yeah, you're not always going to be motivated, inspired, or emotionally charged. And some days are going to suck. And other days you're going to feel like you're slipping backwards. So what? You know, are you a man of your word, or are you as wishy-washy as, you know, the tide? Like, just do it because you said you would.
And it goes back to your previous question, right? That's why it's valuable to have those systems in place, because sometimes your heart's not going to be there. Motivation's not going to be there. Make it easy. Make it easier to execute.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's take one more.
Okay. Sorry, I started moving on. All right, Ian Galpin. How do you reconcile the dichotomy of having men you look up to, for example, Ryan, and their very real struggles? We should not put people we look up to on pedestals, but we still do. We or I look up to them as beacons of hope and examples to follow, yet their failings rattle our perceptions of them and ourselves and lead to doubt in our own journeys. The obvious answer, based on many episodes of Order Man, is not to put these men on pedestals, to realize that they are human and that their own failings and they have their own journey. It is more than likely a deflection of our own avoidance strategy, where one frames one's own failings as an excuse. If Ryan can't succeed in this one aspect, how can I hope to succeed there, etc.? Any advice or pointers to resources to guide in this regard? Also, a huge thank you and bravo to Ryan for being so transparent with his own journey.
If you're saying to yourself, hey, Ryan can't do this, so what hope do I have? You have put me on too great a pedestal. Yeah. You don't know me very well. Like, because I am not. I know you wouldn't, because you know me.
No, but how do you? But he brings up a good point. This is a natural kind of thing, right? Like we see these high achievers and we go, you know, we put them on pedestals. How do we learn from them but not do that?
Yeah. So the thing that I would suggest to you, this is from Jocko, is you've got to detach. You know, we hear ourselves detach ourselves from our emotions so that we can make more rational decisions. And I agree with that. In this context, what I'm saying is detach, or maybe a better word is compartmentalize. So I'm going to look at somebody like Andy Frisella. Andy is extremely, extremely successful in business. He's a hard charger. He tells it like it is. He's been a good friend. He's supportive. He's encouraging. Like there's a lot of things, man, I really love about Andy. Andy doesn't have children. So does that make him like him and I not in alignment? I've got 4 kids. I love these relationships. Like, are we not in alignment because of that? No, I turned to Andy because of these other things that I really value about what he does. And that serves me. And then I look at a guy like Goggins. You know, I don't want to live his life. I don't know what he has to sacrifice in order to be who he is or be who he's come to be known as. But I know he's got skeletons in the closet. I know he's got demons. I know he's got issues. He talks about some of them. And so does that make what he shares any less relevant? No, it just means that I really like his level of discipline, and that inspires me to be more disciplined in my own life. If he came out and he shared something about his life that was, let's just say, less than favorable, would I like, would that diminish the fact that he's a disciplined person and he's inspired me to be disciplined? No, it just means, okay, well, yeah, I compartmental. I didn't idolize him. I just extracted what I thought was going to serve me and help me. And then I implemented that in my life. Like, this is why when the whole thing came out with Liver King, oh, he takes steroids. Well, no shit, number one. Okay. If you didn't think he was, you're an idiot. And number two, so what? Yeah. Okay. And like, so what? If you're so wrapped up in Liver King about taking steroids and that's what consumes all your time and attention, what is your problem? Like, what are you doing in life? Go ahead.
How much of this is rooted in us not having critical thinking, right? Like,
yes.
Like, okay, awesome, Liver King. I'm not going to go all in. Maybe I agree with him, but like, have some, like, we need to logically think through things and also realize that people are on their own paths. Jocko shared something at Origin Camp, and it was really great. He shared about how he almost forced his kids into jujitsu and it backfired on him, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if I listened to Jocko way back then when his kids were young, what was his advice probably to me? Force your kids to do jujitsu. Make them have discipline. And if I were all in, I wasn't logically thinking, I would have done what he'd done. And even him looking back in his past would say, yeah, that was a mistake. Like, how many things have we said on this podcast, right? Where we kind of go, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't agree with myself anymore.
Zero. I've never said that.
Well, I would disagree with you a bunch of times. But we're on a path. So we need to critically think based upon where people are, based upon their circumstances, the way they see the world. Come to your own conclusion. But there's no like silver bullet person, period. Well, maybe there is, but he's not podcasting. He probably died a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one other thing to maybe give you some context is I really like, so I'm going to cartoons because we've watched a lot of cartoons, but in Finding Nemo, which is another really good movie, the clownfish, Marty or Marlin or whatever his name is, he's the dad. Yeah. He's with the turtles, and he's on the East Australian Current or whatever it's called. And the Crush, I think, is the turtle's name. And the turtle has all these kids, and one of them is roughhousing or doing something, and he like pops out of the current into the ocean, and Marty gets freaked out. And Crush is like, whoa, 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 stop. He's like, let's see what the little squirt does. And the little turtle, he like kind of confused for a minute, gets his bearings, gets back into the current, all is well. Okay. I'm sharing this story because sometimes people fall, and they're people that you really look up to and you really admire because of what they've shared or how they've showed up. And sometimes the greatest lesson you can learn from those people is what they do after they F it all up. Mm-hmm. Let's see what he does now. Yeah. Right? Like, man, I really looked up to this person and they had a lot of great information to share and improve my life. And then I learned this thing about them, and it was ugly and I didn't like it. And it makes me think less of them. But why not say this? Let's see what they do now. Let's see how they handle themselves now. And I think there's maybe even greater lessons in what one of your people you're inspired by can do after the mess up, more so than maybe before it.
Yeah. It goes back to being on that path and learning how to stay on the path ourselves. And you're not going to learn how to get back on the path without seeing maybe even, or there's opportunity to learn on how to get back on the path when we fail, if we see other people fail as well.
Yeah.
And how they do it. Because like
Well,
we
and
said
that's
earlier, no one's perfect. It's all about staying on the path.
And that's the other angle too, is that when you screw up, guys, and you will, like we all have. Yeah. I mean, beat yourself up, you know, critically pour over, analyze your performance, figure out what was going wrong, figure out all of those things, dwell on it if you need to, not at your expense, of course, of your health, but really ponder on that, sit on it for a while. But don't think that you're out of the game. Like, don't think that your life's over or that you can't recover. It's that adage of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Like, you're not out of the game. The game is not over. Yeah. Like, I get to decide when it's over, or God gets to decide when it's over for me. And I can decide when it's over when I quit, or God can decide when it's over when he calls me home. But until then, my ass is still in this game. And you watch what I'll do right now. All right, man. Let's wrap it up.
Perfect. So if you haven't connected with us, please do so. Facebook.com/group/order of man. Of course, Ryan mentioned this earlier. You can follow him on the social media at Ryan Mickler. I did see an update. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm okay saying this, but things in the store are on sale. So take
50%
action at store.orderofman.com to take advantage of that.
We're doing that for the month of February. So everything is 50% off in the store. We're just trying to clear out inventory. And so we're just, like I said, 50% off. And these are like battle plan. This is our best selling stuff. We're clearing out all the inventory. Everything 100% is 50% off. So take advantage of it. Use the code 50 at checkout.
50. 50. Oh no, just 50.
Just 50.
50 at checkout.
Perfect. Yep, that's right.
Perfect. Excellent.
Cool. All right, guys. Appreciate your questions. We'll keep giving answers for better or worse. Appreciate you all. Go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.